Good evening, church. In this season, since August, we have felt very clearly that God's priority for us during this time is to see people cross the line, to dedicate their lives to Jesus, to pray and to say, Jesus, I'm yours, I belong to you. We believe that that's Jesus' priority for us, and I love Bill Hybels' passion for this. We're encouraging you to read this book, Just Walk Across the Room by Bill Hybels. It's inspiring. It's inspiring to see how simple it is to get people to think about Jesus again, to think about the God of the Bible again, and just in powerful ways get people to reconsider to God and what He's like. One of the stories that jumps out at me. I mean, there's so many. I basically could just flip to a page, but I won't do that. On page 183-ish, 4-ish, going into 184. I read this story. It's just another one of those just examples of just how simple it is to point people to Jesus and how intentional Bill is when he does this. I love his heart. He says this, on most Mondays, when I need to start reading for the following week's sermon, I head to my favorite diner near the Chicago suburb of Barrington to take up residence for the better part of 2 hours, working through my notes at a little table in the back. On some occasions, I will order a $4 breakfast just as a frame of reference, and I will leave a $5 tip. Now, I'm Dutch, remember? So parting with that $5 is an emotionally charged experience for me. But here is what runs through my mind as I leave the money on the table. Although there's really nobody else to wait on, I've still taken up one of her tables for the better part of 90 minutes with an open Bible in front of me. My waitress, often a single mom trying to make ends meet, knows good and well what I'm working on. She knows I'm working on something that has to do with God and with Christianity. My tip is going to serve as a direct reflection in her mind of how all Christians behave. And a generous tip with a sincere smile might go a long way in solidifying in her mind, at least for today, that Christ followers really do treat others with love and kindness and respect. And I read that story as just one of just so many examples in this book of how simple and yet how intentional Bill is at getting people to think again about Jesus. I love his passion to get people to think again so that their thoughts about Jesus and their thoughts about Jesus' people, that they go up. That they go up and that they turn towards the positive. I just love his heart. It's not that everyone becomes a Christian. He doesn't leave the $5 on the table just so people give their life to Jesus and be saved. But he wants to be intentional with all of his life by how he lives his everyday moments to get people thinking about Jesus or in some way directing them towards the God of the Bible. Today we're in a 4-week series. No, not we're in a 4-week series. Surprise, we're at the end of our Joseph series. No, we're not. We are in week 4 of our series on Joseph. And last week we looked at chapter 37 at how his brothers treated him so evilly, and they sold him off into slavery. Now, this was the last verse that we read in the end of chapter 37. It said this. It said, "Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and the captain of the guard." That's how chapter 37 ends. And chapter 38, we hear nothing about Joseph. Well, what happens in chapter 38 is you see the story of what happens to Judah, one of his older brothers. Actually, if you remember, Judah, thinking Judas, Judah is the one who championed the idea of selling Joseph into slavery. And so in chapter 38, you see Judah's family grow and then be devastated. So you're tracking that in chapter 38. And so you've just been left hanging with what's going on with Joseph in Egypt until you get to chapter 39. And in chapter 39, we get to see what happens to him. And what strikes me as I read this chapter, and really the whole Joseph story, is these powerful, powerful themes and messages that are coming through. When I was thinking about what to specifically highlight in this specific chapter, I was thinking again about the ways, so many ways that how Joseph lives. So many ways his everyday life and decisions and choices points people to the God of the Bible. By how he lives, it just points people to the God of the Bible. Simple ways, everyday ways that his life points people to the God of the Bible. And it's not that these people fall on their faces and give their lives to Yahweh, the God of the Bible. That's not happening. But still, Joseph is living to testify that his God is real, that his God is paying attention, that his God is powerful. And I love it. And I think that as we look at this story, we're going to be able to take some notes about 5 ways that we, like Joseph, can live like Joseph and seeing our lives point to Jesus, point to the God of the Bible in the everyday things. Let's dive in, and I'm just going to start reading from Genesis chapter 39. If you have your Bibles, you can turn with me there, or the words are going to be on the screen. But this is how chapter 39 starts, and we pick up after one chapter's absence with the Joseph story. It says this. It says, "Now Joseph had been taken to Egypt. An Egyptian named Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. The Lord, Yahweh, was with Joseph, and he became a successful man serving in the household of his Egyptian master." Now, the way that reads seems pretty natural as you're just kind of looking at, okay? Joseph sold into slavery. Yahweh, the God of the Bible, is with him, and so he's successful. But just remember, he's sold into slavery, right? Joseph is not where he wants to be. He's not where he wants to be in life. He's not where he wants to be at all. He wants to be home. He wants to be with his father who loves him. He wants to be free and not a slave. He wants to be in his home country. He doesn't want to be in Egypt. He doesn't want to be a slave. He's not living his dream job in his dream country, with his dream career, with his dream employer. And so Joseph has an intentional choice to make when looking at his life and looking at his situation. How is he going to live? How is he going to live? How is he going to approach his life and his work? The work that he doesn't want, he wouldn't have chosen. And I want to point out here that Joseph has a choice, and he makes a choice to work hard. To work hard, to work well, to excel, to have a great attitude, to work as if working for God. And in the place that he is, even though it's not the place he wants to be. And I guess my proposal here is that his choice to work hard, to have a good attitude, in not his dream job, is one of the powerful ways that his life points to his faith, the way that his life points to the God of the Bible. If you're taking notes today, number one of the powerful ways to point people to Jesus in any generation is seeking to thrive in the place where you are. Seeking to thrive in the place where you are, even if it's not where you want to be, even if it's not where you would choose to be or where you ever set out to be. Seeking to thrive in the place where you are, especially when it's not where you want to be, it takes faith. It takes lifting your eyes higher than your situation. It takes looking at the God of the Bible, trusting that God is with you, trusting that God sees you, trusting that God cares how you're living today with whatever is in front of you and whatever your situation, even unpleasant situations. This is a very biblical message. You see God talk about this like when his people are exiled and they go to Babylon. Okay, they don't want to be in Babylon. They don't want to be in exile. They don't want their homeland taken away from them. And yet God tells them in Jeremiah 29:11 to seek the well-being of the city where they're sent. You see it also in the New Testament in Colossians. You see Paul writing in Colossians 3, basically telling people to work as if you're working for Jesus. That's his commission to the New Testament believers. As you work, and that's to slaves, by the way, right? You don't get a choice here. And maybe your slave, maybe your master is evil, maybe he's good, whatever, but however you're working, whatever your situation, whether it's good or bad, work as if you're working for Jesus. Your attitude towards your job and your life, it's a big deal. Your work ethic ought to stand out from everyone in your workplace. Your attitude should stand above the rest. Now, don't be a workaholic. I'm not saying be a workaholic. There are strong strains of workaholism in my extended family. Evil stuff flows from that. Don't be one of the things that also points people to Jesus is that you go home and you spend time with your family and you love your family well. However, while you're at work in healthy ways, our work ethic and our attitude ought to stand above the rest. Why? Because our eyes are higher than those that we work with. Because we're looking at Jesus. Because we're looking at Jesus and we're looking at how we're looking at life as if our work situation has been given to us today by Jesus. That we've been placed here by Jesus as a strategic and special placement. We believe that God was intentional in placing us there as a witness to those that we're surrounded by. And so because our eyes are higher and our perspective is larger, we understand the divine significance of our work situation. And so our attitude is greater and our work ethic stronger, resulting in pointing people to Jesus. Why do you care? Why are you working so hard? We are flipping burgers at McDonald's. Because I'm working for Jesus. I'm working for Jesus, not some clown. That worked. that worked. Okay. Okay. Now, I'm not saying, though, that it's wrong or evil to leave a bad job situation. But what I am saying is, as long as you're there, work as if working for Jesus. That's what I'm saying. Seek to thrive. Seeking to thrive in that place you are in life. In the Joseph story, it's his work environment or his slavery work environment. But for you, it could be in your home or it could be with children. It could be in your studies. It can be in your studies or whatever. Seeking to thrive in the place you are, especially when it's not your dream situation, is how you can point to Jesus. And as people see you working, they see you working for higher reasons. Christians ought to be the best, the most determined, maybe not excelling, but the most determined workers, the most determined students, the most determined homemakers. Because we serve the greatest master. We serve Jesus. Let's keep going with our story. That's one way. That's one way here. And then continuing on in verse 3, when his master, who is Potiphar, saw that the Lord was with him, Joseph, and that the Lord Yahweh made everything Joseph did successful, Joseph found favor in his master's sight and became his personal attendant. Potiphar also put him in charge of his household and placed all that he owned under Joseph's authority. From the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, Yahweh, the Lord, blessed the Egyptian's house because of Joseph. Because of Joseph. The Lord's blessing, Yahweh's blessing, was on all that Potiphar owned in his house and in his fields. He left all that he owned under Joseph's authority. He did not consider himself with anything except the food he ate. In Ephesians chapter 1, verse 3, we're told that all believers have been blessed. That all believers have actually every spiritual blessing in Christ from God the Father. That's what we see in Ephesians chapter 1, that every believer carries every spiritual blessing. When you live to please God and when you live to walk in his ways, you also carry this favor of someone who is in sync with what God wants. And you have this favor going on in his life. And in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 2, that begins saying, the good person obtains favor from the Lord. That's not a promise, but it's generally true. One of the 5 ways that we can point to people to Jesus in our generation that we see in the life of Joseph here in this chapter is number 2, by being a conduit of favor and blessing. See, Joseph is saturated with God's favor and blessing that just spills out into Potiphar's home. His father Jacob was also that way. His father Jacob was saturated with God's favor and blessing, and thus Laban's home was blessed, and his livestock was blessed. Now, and that's great because Laban was a punk, right? He's this evil guy, not a good guy, and yet his house has this blessing over it because of Jacob, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing because it's part of Jacob's witness. My God is real and to be taken seriously. My God sees and knows and cares and blesses and is powerful and interacts and intervenes. And I've got his favor. That's a good thing. His life points to the God of the Bible. Abraham has this as well. So many, maybe most, maybe all of the Old Testament saints seem to have this role of being a conduit of favor and blessing. Not all, but many of them. God's with Joseph. And if you've given your life to Jesus, God's with you as well. God's with you as well. So live to please him and let that favor and blessing flow into your life and flow through your life as another witness that points people to Jesus, just like what we see here with Joseph. Let's keep going here. Let's keep reading in chapter 39. It says this. It says, now Joseph was well built and handsome. And after some time, his master's wife looked longingly at Joseph and said, sleep with me. Which, if you're new to the planet, that's super code for something different. But he refused. Look, he said to his master's wife, with me here, my master does not concern himself with anything in his house, and he has put all that he owns under my authority. No one in this house is greater than I am. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. So how could I do such a great evil and sin against God? Now, I'll get to the sexual stuff in a moment here, but big picture, another powerful way that Joseph's life points people to God is by living supremely trustworthy. That's number 3. Living supremely trustworthy. Integrity. Living with integrity, especially when no one's looking, it's one of those powerful ways that you can point people to God. Now, remember, Joseph was 17 years old, right? When he goes and he leaves his father's house. I mean, that made it sound kind. When he is ripped from his father's house and sold into slavery in a traumatic way. But just remember that this is Joseph's first time away from home. First time away from family, from anyone who knows who he is. Nobody knows who Joseph is. Probably nobody in all of Egypt knows who he is. And these are times when so many people lack integrity. When they lack integrity. The time when they're away from home. The time when they find themselves surrounded by no one who knows them. These are those moments when there's no accountability. Like maybe you've experienced this moving to university and moving away from your parents. Maybe you moved to a different city and nobody knew who you were when you moved here. Or maybe traveling alone for work or being home alone with your computer or something like that. Men and women, integrity is holiness when no one's watching. When no one knows. God smiles at you in the moments where you decide the kind of person that you're going to be. So be rightly impressed with 17-year-old Joseph, where no one knows who he is and how he's choosing to live with the highest levels of godliness and integrity, choosing to be supremely trustworthy in everything. In everything. It's admirable. Integrity and trustworthiness, they can make people ask why. Why when you can get away with it? Why? No one will ever know. Why? Well, Joseph tells us why. He tells us what he's thinking. It's written right here. Why is he going to choose to live with supreme trustworthiness in this situation with Potiphar's wife? He says, how could I do such a great evil, and sin against God? It's because his life is pointing to God. He's thinking about God. That's why he's living with integrity, and that's what's being pointed to. Living with supreme integrity points people to the God of the Bible because the choices show that we genuinely believe that God is real, that he's seeing us, that he blesses those who choose to walk in his way, that he knows, that he cares how we live. It points to Jesus by saying no to temptation when no one's watching, and saying yes to integrity and godliness when no one's paying attention. It says, I'm thankful, Jesus. It says, I'm thankful for this great salvation. It says, I'm thankful for saving. I'm thankful for this grace, and I take it seriously. I take this gift of forgiveness seriously. And so I want to walk in your ways even when no one is watching. Friends, all through your life, your integrity and your trustworthiness will be tested. All through your life, you're going to be tempted to compromise in one way or another. And this means that all through your life, you're going to have powerful opportunities to point people to Jesus simply by continuing and being resolute in choosing to live trustworthy in everything. In everything. It's a big deal. I'm amazed by Joseph. I'm amazed by his character. I'm amazed by his choices here. And so I'm going to keep reading. It says this in verse 10. It says, although she, Potiphar's wife, spoke to Joseph day after day. This is not a one-time thing. This is day after day. And from Joseph's situation, as he looks ahead, he's a slave, right? He can't go anywhere. It's not like he can escape this everyday opportunity and situation here. Day after day, and as he looks forward, potentially even for the rest of his life, he's going to have to endure this. Day after day, he refused to go to bed with her. Now, one day, he went into the house to do his work, and none of the household servants were there. She grabbed him by his garment and said, sleep with me. But leaving his garment in her hand, he escaped. He escaped and ran outside. Guys, in every culture, men and women, in every culture, and extremely true in our city, in our generation, determined and resilient purity points people to Jesus. And that's number 3. Living with resilient purity. Resilient purity points people to Jesus. Potiphar has the invitation to compromise sexually. He refuses. He has the opportunity every day, and that pressure every day, and he refuses every day. He can't escape, but he can continue to be resilient in that situation. If you want to follow Jesus, the call is to live pure. In our generation, that means we have to be resilient in the face of many different kinds of opportunities to compromise. Definitely online. And it means everyday opportunity. We can't escape all of the opportunities. We can't escape them. And yet, if you want to follow Jesus, one of the most major and clear directives is to live pure. To live pure, to not have sex with people that you're not married to. And some people are like, but Brian, I'm in love, and I don't care who knows about it. Or Brian, you just don't even understand. I've got these feelings that are all through my body, and I love them, and I'm going to love them forever. I just know that I'm going to love them forever. We are in love. Okay, well then marry them. And let me be clear. Being in love, even being in forever love, does not justify the sin of having sex with someone you're not married to. We are called to be resilient in our purity in the face of every opportunity and every temptation. Okay, Brian. But the thing is, I can't marry them because I'm like 14 years old. I can't marry them, and I've got all these feelings. And okay, another scenario. And the person is married. The person's married, so I can't marry them, and yet I have all these feelings, and they're so powerful, and they're so real, and I just am so. Okay. Still, resilient. We're called to resilience and purity. Love them well by being resilient in purity. And you're just like, but Brian, look, okay, I don't know your exact scenario. You don't have to run it past me. That's okay. I don't know your exact scenario. I don't know your exact temptation. I don't know your struggle, your exact struggle. I don't know what's going on in your heart or in your mind, but this I do know. I do know this in our family, in Jesus' family, the family of Jesus, we are called to live with a resilient purity that points people to Jesus. Now, to be clear, being tempted by someone and having that temptation run through your mind, that's difficult. Or being drawn to pornography and things like that, that can be very difficult. And sometimes you can't do anything about the opportunities or your thoughts. Sometimes you can, though. And sometimes you can run away like Joseph is gonna, and he runs away, and that's good and right. But most days of Joseph's life, day after day, he has to just be resilient. And same with you, friends. You're just going to have to grow in this resilience and choose to say no to that which entices. Say no to that which pulls you, and yes to this kind of purity. And my guess is that the enemy is going to bombard you with lies and say, this is your opportunity. Don't miss it. It is the once in a lifetime. And he's just a liar this way. Or he's going to say, it's too late for you now. You've already crossed certain lines. And so you might as well give up. And you've missed. Those are all lies. Those are all standard lies that the enemy loves to use. Whatever your story from today forward, be resilient. Be resilient in purity. I don't know what's going on in your life, but during the pre-service prayer time, very often we have a time where we confess the sins of our church family and what's going on in our church family. And during that time, I'm often picturing Jesus, like in Revelation chapter 2 and 3. In Revelation 2 and 3, Jesus is walking through the churches, and he sends them a letter about what he sees. And I picture Jesus in that time walking through these aisles and looking at us, and I'm just like, what does he see? What does he see in the area of purity? I worry what he sees in our family here. And so every week I just beg God, have mercy on our church. Have mercy on our generation, and fill us instead with a hunger for holiness. Fill us with a hunger for holiness. It's one of the epic ways we as God's people point to our belief that God is real is by living with this kind of purity. It's a sexually out of control age we live in, but we live to please God. And we live to show the world what God is like. The purity of God's heart by the purity of our actions and our behavior. Now, Joseph's purity here is actually going to ruin his life. It's going to seem like his choices to be pure, it's a waste. And he's going to go from a big deal in Potiphar's house to being in prison with a life sentence. Okay? So I just want to say that Joseph may have felt that resilient purity was a waste and not worth it. And some of you may feel that way as well when you look at your life and your situation. But years later, Years later, we discover that it was his resilient purity which positioned him in the place that he needed to be for Pharaoh to know about him so that he could be promoted to be the vizier of Egypt, the second in charge of Egypt under Pharaoh. You have no idea. You have no idea how God will honor and bless your resilience and you for being resilient in the area of purity. He sees and he rewards those who trust him and walk in his ways. Well, I've pretty much given away the whole rest of the story, but I'm going to continue reading as well. So she grabbed him by the garments and said, "Sleep with me," but leaving his garment in her hand, he escaped and ran outside. When she saw that he had left his garment with her and had run outside, she called the household servants. "Look," she said to them, "my husband brought a Hebrew man to make fools of us. He came to me so he could sleep with me, and I screamed as loud as I could. When he heard me screaming for help, he left his garment with me and ran outside." She put Joseph's garment beside her until his master came home. Then she told him the same story. "The Hebrew slave you brought to us came to make a fool of me. But when I screamed for help, he left his garment with me and ran outside." When his master heard the story his wife told him, "These are the things your slave did to me," he was furious. And he had him thrown into prison where the king's prisoners were confined. So Joseph was there in prison. But, verse 21, Yahweh, the Lord, was with Joseph and extended kindness to him. Okay, the fifth way we see how our lives can point to Jesus. Number 5, maintaining high faith when facing life-ruining false accusations. Maintaining high faith when facing life-ruining, really any situations, but definitely in this situation, false accusations. People are probably going to say untrue things about you. And it's not going to feel good at all. People are probably going to say things about you and that aren't true, and it's going to hurt. They're going to talk about you in ways that are completely unfair. Maybe you've experienced some of this before. People are going to say things to you or about you that are going to be intentionally trying to make you look bad, maybe twisting things that you've said or have done. This is evil stuff. This is evil stuff. God hates gossip. He hates the spreading of non-positive words about people. He hates it. Don't do that. He hates people who give false testimony, who falsely testify about what other people have done, and those who betray with their words and with their actions. You know, it's not going to be a surprise to you that some people have said untrue things about me, which are unfair, but I have never, ever in my life experienced what Joseph is experiencing here. Life-ruining false accusations. I mean, the guy is trying to live a godly life. He is trying to live with supreme integrity. He has chosen to live in a way above reproach, entirely trustworthy, with supreme character, saying no to every temptation day after day. He has chosen to make the right choice, and yet no one believes him because of this false accusation, and so his life crumbles, and it is in ruin because no one believes him. Even though all his life he exhibited that integrity and blamelessness. This is the second time. It's the second time he's faced life-destroying ruin by people who do evil to him, and there's nothing that he can do about it. Except for maybe 3 things. He can forgive. He can forgive them, and this is going to be huge for his own heart. Look, guys. The person who can master forgiveness can discover life and joy and peace. If you can master forgiveness, if you can master that very difficult thing of forgiving everyone who sins against you, if you can master forgiving those who do horrible things, maybe even ruin your life with untrue, false accusations and all that kind of stuff, if you can learn to do that and forgive in those situations, then you can discover life and joy and peace. No forgiveness, you're not going to find it. Joseph can forgive this person who's ruined his life. That's the first thing he can do. He can move on, number 2. Second thing he can do is move on. Like I said in the beginning, I said he can seek once again to thrive in the place where he is now. And this is even more not where he wanted to be. And this is starting over, all over again. It was not his life goal to be in prison for life in Memphis, in Egypt. That was not his supreme ambition. And there he is, though. And what can he do? He can forgive, he can move on, and thirdly, he can trust. He can trust that God still sees him, that God is still paying attention. He can trust that anything is possible. This is that life conviction of a true believer. He can believe that anything is possible because God is real. Getting out of prison, even though he has life, anything is possible because God is powerful. Anything is possible because God loves him. And he can live with that kind of trust. Friends, I want you to tuck this thought away. If your day comes, Lord, may this day never come upon anyone in this room. But if your day comes, and if you wake up someday and you find yourself betrayed, you find yourself being falsely accused, you find your life falling apart, I want you to tuck this away. I want you to tuck this story away. The story of Joseph and what's happened to him. The ruin of his life and reputation, these false accusations. I want you to remember Joseph and remember his example and then hold on to this idea, even though it takes years, God is still with him. And God is still paying attention to him. And the same is going to be true with you. Tuck that away for that future day. If you respond with high faith in God in that day, high trust that God is with you, that God will help you, that mindset amongst tragedy powerfully points people to Jesus. Friends, if you believe in Jesus, you've got a powerful mission to love him with all your heart, soul, and strength, and to let all of your life testify that you believe he's real, that you know he's with you, that you know he's going to help you, and that he's worth following. He's wonderful and worth following with your life, with your integrity, with your trustworthiness, with your purity, with every part of who you are. That's why we live, to point people to Jesus so that they can know that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. If you've not given your life to Jesus, we're going to give you an opportunity to do that in a moment here. But until then, we have 3 challenges for you this week. Challenge number 1 is this. Challenge number 1, what are 2 ways you can increase your attitude and work ethic in whatever life situation God has you currently in? 2 ways to increase your attitude and work ethic. Number 2, dedicate your life to resilient purity, committing to change impure behaviors now and taking up Jesus' call to live pure. And then number 3, choose to forgive the ones who have spread lies about you and hurt you and your reputation.
Hello, and thank you for watching our service here at Rehope. My name's Adam, and I'm on the pastoral care team. So, every Sunday, we invite people in the congregation to come up and receive some prayer ministry, and we want to actually extend that offer out to you guys who are watching. So if you ever want to come and receive prayer ministry from us, just send us an email. If you get in touch with Hannah, who is our pastoral admin, her email address is hannah@rehope.co.uk. Okay, thank you very much, and God bless.